Forgot to start that. All right, so we'll have the panelists introduce themselves. Liza, how about we'll start with you, since you're a legend around here.
Sure. Hopefully I can live up to the name today. This is a lot of pressure there. I'm Liza Rodewald. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Instant Teams. Instant Teams is a remote team marketplace that enables companies to scale customer support, operational support, and tech support teams directly from the military spouse community. So we're part of the Blue Startups program, cohort 12, 11? 11?
11, I think.
11? Yeah. Okay. You've had several since then, but we were in person and pre-COVID. So part of that, one of the last cohorts to go through before all of that stuff hit. So happy to be here and just give my perspective on, raising money and the whole process of Instant Teams and any of the female founder issues during that process we want to talk about. So thank you for having me, Shanoa. Always good to be with the Blue Startups family.
Awesome. Thank you, Liza. And yes, Liza is a legend. She is one of our most successful companies and a rising star in our portfolio. So hopefully we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about her latest accomplishments, but they have grown very quickly since being in the program several years ago. So we're really proud of them. Both female founded companies, two women in the founder seat there. So very exciting. All right, Trish, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Shanoa. It's great to be here. I'm Trish Costello. I'm the CEO and founder of Portfolia. We have 14 venture capital funds, and our funds are unique in that all of our limited partner member investors whose money we invest are women, or 92% of them are women. So we're quite an unusual group in the venture world, over 1,300 limited partner members in our funds. We back women in and others, but in areas where women really have an impact, women's health. We were the first venture fund in women's health. One of the first led by 5 women of color. So we have Rising America and a number of other funds. So I'm a big believer in backing women and backing people of color and creating new innovation. I'm in San Francisco, so I'm envious of all of you in beautiful Hawaii and look forward to joining you sometime soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Trish. And Portfolia really is amazing. When I met Trish several years ago, I was like, I have to be a part of this. So happy to say I'm an investor in Portfolia, and everybody should be. They make it really easy. They have it down like a system. They do not make it hard to be a limited partner at all. So check it out. All right, Paulette, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paulette Jencks. I'm thrilled to be here. I am a lead mentor at Blue Startups, which has been really rewarding, great working with the different teams. And then my day job is I have my own consulting company where I provide marketing and strategy to companies that are focused on engaging and reaching parents. Super excited to be here and talk about female founders and how we can, begin to change the game.
Awesome. All right, gang, let's see. I still have one panelist who is lost, and I feel terrible for Aubrie. She's out there trying to get in, and now she can't because the sales have ended.
Bring her in.
I don't know how to do it.
Earlier, thinking it was just us, didn't realize that we had the whole crew on. So
I know.
Everyone, I really wasn't trying to sell you on the fund. I was just chatting with Paulette earlier.
Well, if anybody has a brilliant idea about how to get our poor panelist in here, please let me know. Okay. Yes, Robbie says, email her the Zoom link. I tried that. And okay. Sorry, gang. We might just have to go on without her because I'm not real good at solving this problem on the fly here. So I'm going to ask my first question. And while you guys are giving your brilliant comments, I will be problem solving in the background here. So the first question, of course, is about all this focus that we have on female founders and investing in female founders. I'm not going to be cynical, but there's been a lot of attention paid and a lot of maybe lip service. But what we know is the stats haven't changed much, right? So we're still at about 2% of all funded companies are female founded, which is pretty sad. So I want you guys to comment on that. Where are we today? What progress has been made? I know there has been some. With all this focus on the issue, kind of where are we today? And just love to get your thoughts on that. We'll start with you, Trish.
Well, the numbers are not positive. The trend is not in the right way right now in venture capital. I believe the 2021 number was 2% of all venture capital went to women in 2021. That's the lowest number since 2016. It was 2.2% last year. So if you're just looking at the venture world, it's just a pitiful figure. If you take in women of color or people of color, let's just say not even women, it's less than 1%. So women of color really have it, a difficult time raising money. So on the surface, that does not look good. But luckily, many women start out early. And while they're really looking to scale and test their operation, they go to angels. And angel investment in women has continued to grow. There are a lot of women angels that are investing in women and male angels investing in women as well. And then those women angels are actually quite successful and are starting to move into venture. But on the surface, it's not trending the right way, even though there's a lot of lip service about investing in women.
Yeah. Paulette, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Trish said. I think the positive that we are starting to see is more light put on the subject. We're starting to see some IPOs, some female-led companies, Maven and Figs and just a bunch of different ones. Of course, I'm not thinking of them right now, but we're starting to see, these names come to light and female founders kind of coming to the spotlight. So I think it's starting to inspire a lot of people, and it's also starting to spark a light in terms of like, oh, what am I missing here? Or what's happening? And, how kind of can I get in on this as well?
Yeah, well, hopefully, yes. As we know, in the startup world, FOMO is a very, very important factor. So I'm hoping we're all going to be creating a lot of that. I know Liza's working on creating her own FOMO over there. Liza, what do you see about this trend of investing in female founders? Is lip service? Is there some truth to it? What's going on?
I think I probably have an interesting take because I'm a female founder that has raised VC funding and in the middle of almost crossing a finish line and in another round. And so maybe just a positive spin on some things that I have seen that has changed a little bit. Like when I first came to Hawaii and I was raising angel and raising our very first round, I was a little hesitant about doing it remotely because a lot of things were in person and a lot of road trips for investing was like a common thing, like people spending months. And I would say most women can't go on a 3-month roadshow to raise money. I know I couldn't personally. I already have children. I have a life here. There's no way I could just leave for 3 months and raise money. And this time when I've raised capital, it was 100% because of COVID, obviously, but 100% via Zoom. No investor wants you to come to their office. Nobody wants to meet in person because of everything that's happening. But it's really opened, I think, the ability for you to pitch a lot of different investors, meet a lot of different people without having to do so much travel. And so I think that'll open the door a little bit more for some more women to get in front. of some VCs that maybe they wouldn't have had as much access to because they weren't able to travel to California or travel to New York City, for weeks at a time. So I see that as a really positive change. And I think most investors that I've talked to now, they're used to it and they like it. They can get more done by having these Zoom meetings. And so they all were very comfortable with that as a way to go through the process. So I thought that was encouraging, and hopefully we'll start having a positive impact on more women coming in to the investment space.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a really interesting perspective, right? Because one of the analyses of why things have been kind of at this steady state through COVID, right? Because we were making a little bit of progress there and then things just kind of flatlined, was that things are all virtual and that's not conducive to women fundraising. So it's interesting that your experience has been quite the opposite. Which tells me something else is going on here. why are we not moving the needle? So yeah, that's a good question as to why the needle's not moving, if that's not a deterrent, in fact, could be helpful to women in fundraising. Any comments about that? Have you guys heard this theory? Trish, have you heard this theory that the online only thing hurt female founders in fundraising?
Well, I haven't seen it myself, but all of our, all of the investments that we do, we've made 37 investments last year, over about 105 in the last 3.5 years. We do it all online, and we have even before the pandemic, because we have a national footprint. So, we don't want people traveling in all the time, and we don't want to be traveling all over the country. Again, we're all women team. And so like Liza's saying, that we created in the way that works for us. I don't know if it should make a difference. I personally think that being on Zoom levels the playing field in some ways, for all the reasons that Liza mentioned, but also because you're less likely to be judging people on what they're wearing or mannerisms or things like that. I think it kind of cuts through that. Mm-hmm. And there's a little more focus on, the materials and the deck and that type of thing. But what happens is then you really are investing on that growth and the data. So I think it's really important for women to make sure they have that data in their deck when they're out there. And it looks like our panelist is here.
Yay, Aubrie, sorry for all
I'm sorry too. My inbox is a mess, so I'm sorry if I lost it. It's like I couldn't find it. I felt so bad. So
I hear you. My inbox is exactly the same. So Aubrie, please introduce yourself, and we're just in the midst of our discussion, so we'll get back to it after you get a chance to introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Aubrie Pagano. I'm general partner at Alpaca VC. We're a early stage VC based in New York. We were founded in 2013. And we invest in things that are at the intersection of the digital and physical worlds, where we're trying to find the people, processes, and places that power modern commerce using technology. And so, have loved to be in the Hawaii ecosystem and look at all the ways that there are companies there that are sort of at that intersection. And prior to that too, just to give you guys some context, I started my career out in finance, and then I worked for 7 years with my best friend running a large global direct-to-consumer women's fashion brand called Bow and Drape. And so we built that brand across the US, Canada, and Japan, and then exited that business in 2019 to a private equity firm. So I lived firsthand both sides of the table, raising venture as a female, and for a company that's hero product was a sparkly sweatshirt. So definitely had its challenges in many boardrooms. And then now am happily on the other side of the table, trying to find mispriced risk in diverse founders.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Aubrie. We were just talking about kind of the state of affairs here with regards to investing in female-founded companies and how essentially we've heard a lot about it, but the statistics haven't moved much. And I'm wondering if you have any comments on that. We've already heard from the other panelists on what their thoughts on the matter are, but wondering what your thoughts are. kind of the current state of affairs here?
Well, I mean, the sort of proof is unfortunately in the pudding that the numbers have not really gotten that much better, despite, I think, a lot of clattering of pans and noise making about the issue. And so part of it is that, so part of me is disheartened by that. Part of me wonders if also there is just a sea change happening. It's just going to be a lot slower. I know in terms of venture partners, it's still under 15% of venture partners are women. And I really do think that, diverse check writers write more diverse checks into diverse founders. And so that's why I became a VC. A big part of my mission of, that I draw from, purpose in my job. And so part of me feels like that is a matter of time, where I think there's some nuance to that, where it's like, not only are those just like under 15% of women are check writers, but it's also like, oftentimes those are women who are like solo females on a team of mostly men. Mm-hmm. Also, a lot of times those are more junior partners or partners that have sort of implied, like they have less sway internally, whether that's like officially in carry or whether that's like implied in terms of tenure at the firm. Yeah. And then third thing I would say is that unfortunately, there are also some hires that were sort of, to that end, even like what I would call like token hires, where it's sort of a check the box for LPs, but it's not really about giving diverse decision rights. And so I think all of that is endemic in the industry. And so I think we're just like not there yet. But I also think the more that we can have successful female founders exit successfully and be those unicorns, like it changes the incentive structure over time. Like I know I have two friends that I co-invest with. I started out investing with Trish and Trina from Figs, who just IPO'd their brand, and then also Kate Ryder, who founded Maven Clinic, which is now a unicorn status company, and that just happened over the last year or two. So I think, similar to the way that the market kind of corrects slowly from the public to the private markets, I think some of that change needs to like trickle down. And so they're sort of leading the way as successful founders who are showing that it's valuable to invest in females who can outperform. And I just think it's something that's like a drumbeat that's going to take longer than I think anybody hopes.
And we have our next future unicorn right here on the call, which is Liza with Instateam. So we have that to look forward to. Yes, more female founded unicorns I think will help, but obviously more decision makers at the partner level too. I think your 15% stat is probably pretty generous. I think if you go with just,
I think it's 11 or 13.
Yeah, GP level, it's, closer to 5, right? So it's that's got to change first. It's one of the reasons that Trish is doing the work she's doing to kind of work on changing that part of it. So yeah, I guess that's my next question. Really, what are the keys to truly leveling the playing field and not just talking about it? I'd love to hear some thoughts about that. We'll start with Liza. Liza, do you have thoughts about the true progress that needs to be made and how it gets done?
Yeah, I feel like a little ill-equipped for this subject because I'm just coming off of my raise and, kind of in the middle of all of that myself. And I really have had a positive experience. Now, I don't know, it could be that I'm just naive and I don't know what I'm being discriminated against in the process, and that I did hear a lot of no's in the process as well. I don't know.
I think it's a good question, Liza, because I think I run into this a lot too, which is perhaps the problem is not at the level that you're at. Perhaps it's back up to the earlier levels, right? It's that perhaps not enough women are starting companies that want to be high growth companies and all of that. And when I say that, people get mad at me, but that's from where I sit, kind of what I see is not enough women kind of jumping in. Now, once you jump in, maybe there are some things working against you, but there are things working for you too, right? So I don't know, maybe the problem lies before you started the company, when you were at that decision-making point, right? Should I start this company? Let's see, I've got 4 kids, husband, I've got all this to consider, but you made the, very brave decision to jump right in and really try to grow the company. So now I think not every woman is going to do that. So that may be part of the issue too. Your thoughts?
I have spent a lot of time with other founders just helping to instill some confidence, right? In that you belong in the space. I am a woman, I'm over 40. I am a blonde woman, which is apparently also a negative thing when you're raising money. Who knew? I have 4 kids. My whole company was remote. I had quite a few things stacked against me in the fundraising process, right? But I think just having the confidence in your idea, what you're executing on, and showing up like that, knowing that you deserve to be in the room no matter what, you have a place there. I think that mindset goes a long way in a lot of the meetings and things that I was in. And I can remember, if I go back way, way, way back when I was first starting, most mentors that I had or contact with, they would say things like, are you sure you want to build a venture company? Are you sure it's not a lifestyle business? Are you sure that you want to dedicate all this time to it? I wouldn't be as committed just because I was a mother and doing all of these other things. So there was some of that kind of initial, I would say, feedback in the beginning, but I'm just stubborn. So
well, thank God you're stubborn. I think that's a good thing. And it does remind me of something. I'm sure you've heard me say this before, Liza, because I say it a lot, but often with the female founders, because we work on the confidence issue a lot here at Blue Startups, right? I find that the female founders are much more competent than their male counterparts, but not as confident. And that we need to really bring the two together, right? And oftentimes with male founders, not to, disregard a whole half of the planet, but the opposite is true, right? They have a lot of confidence, but not as much to back it up, right? So we need to bring those things into a little more of an equilibrium as well, I think. Paulette, your comments. How do we
get
this level playing field going here?
Liza, it's great to hear that, you had such a successful experience, because I will say I work with a lot of founders, female founders, and I hear the same thing every week. And that is, it has been very tough and it's a grind, and not to say anyone not fundraising, it's a grind, but
it's a grind no matter what, right?
It's more, the questions they're getting. And I think part of that is to level the playing field, is really being able to articulate the opportunities, and for, to bring our male allies into the conversation too, right? Continue to kind of educate and show that there's, better returns on women-led companies. And there's these huge opportunities that have been overlooked for so long, femtech, for instance. There's just so much happening in that space, and we're starting to see it come through. But, part of leveling the playing field is to kind of open everybody's eyes to these different opportunities, and bring in our male allies to help start changing things.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with you there, Paulette. When we talk about why we invest in female founders, people think, oh, it's because you're a woman. I'm like, it's because the returns, are good here over here. And because my female founders perform very well. Liza the legend, so it all makes sense from a fund perspective as well. So I think the more that becomes, front and center in people's minds, the more things will shift as well. Trish, your comments. How do we get there? Permanent shifting this playing field here.
Yeah, I think that it's a long haul. I've been working on it since for many years. Decades, and would have thought that it would have, we would have seen more change, by now. We created the Kauffman Fellows in 1994 with a third for venture capital, with a third of them as women, and their returns were better than men. So the fact that we're still dealing with this almost 30 years later, without much change, could be really, disheartening. But you know, even though the percentages are not increasing, the actual dollars are. There's a lot more money being put to work, which means there are a lot more women that are being funded, even though that percentage is still just, you know, woefully low. You know, I think the problem is you do have Lizas, but they are more outliers, you know, when you're looking at the numbers, you know. So if you are like a star, you know, and everybody can see you're a star, then, you know, then people will invest in you, especially if you are rapidly scaling. And that's really critical, because when investors are looking, there's data that's pretty irrefutable now that when investors are looking at men, they're looking at their potential, and they will even ask them, well, where are you going? The questions are around potential. Often when they're looking at women, their questions are around risk and where they are today. How fast you've grown today is what they judge, not on your potential. And so as long as we're aware of that, and because I'm on both sides too. So Portfolia itself is a fintech company, you know, and we've invested in 107 companies, you know, across 14 funds. So I'm wearing both of those shoes, and we have to be aware of how to pitch, you know, who we're pitching to, how to pick who we want around that table, which is really critical. I would never take money from someone, from a fund or an angel group that's never backed a woman before. I think you need to be smart, really smart about who the partners are that you bring in. Yeah.
Well, and I like your analysis of things that are shifting, right? So, you know, I will say that I've been in the investing game a long time, at least 20 years, and was an angel investor for a long time. When I first started going to the Angel Capital Association meetings, all men. Now it's, you know, a good 50-50, if not more women. So that's gonna, you know, again, shift into venture capital and on down the line. So I think, you know, it takes time, but, you know, these shifts are taking place. We can see the evidence of it. Aubrie, do you have comments on how we make this shift more permanent here?
Yeah, I have sort of 3 thoughts. 2 I would bucket under what I would call like the luchador mask, and I'll explain that. And then the other is thinking about like generational wealth. And so when I say the luchador mask, whenever I was raising, and I talked to a lot of other female founder friends, it was almost like you had to put on a persona, almost like a luchador mask of like, what am I going to present? And that may be a little bit different than how I am authentically day to day. 2 things that I think are documented are, 1, there is unconscious bias about women who are strong, assertive, and confident coming off as bitches. And so I think there's a little bit of like practicing what the right tone is there, where you don't actually want to ape men, but you want to think about how that sort of sales performance goes. Because at the end of the day, it's the sales performance. Your data backs it up, right? Like your company, your data, your customer references, like, but this is like you're selling. And then the other is what I've seen systematically now, having invested in, you know, dozens of female founded teams, is women systematically talk about what they have done, not what they're going to do. And it's sort of interesting to your point earlier about potential. What I find actually is like, when I hear a lot of men pitch, they talk about the future. They're always forward facing. It's like, look what I can do. Look at the upper bound of what is possible with my company. And a lot of women actually are more timid about stretching that. And that's, I think it was in the Lean In book about like men typically actually like overestimate how well they do on tests.
Right.
And women actually underestimate how well they do on tests. And so I think
they will consider themselves qualified for the job before
women will
consider themselves qualified for the same job, right? With the same resume. Yeah.
So like, to me, I think there's a psychological shift that needs to happen that says, you don't want to lie, but it's like, let's think about what the possible bounds of success are, and let's pitch that. Let's not just pitch like what we can prove on paper today with 100% certainty. I don't know if you guys agree, but like there's that's a big difference I see when men and women pitch. And it inevitably, like, investors, we undercut everyone, because like when someone tells us that something's, you know, if it's going to reach 20 million, we're like, okay, whatever, like 30% haircut right off the bat. Because we're used, you know, we know we're being sold. And so if women are already undercutting themselves, then investors are going to take a haircut of that even further. So to me, I think a big part of it is thinking about how you put on that luchador mask and like really think about what effective sales are, which I think can be separate from like your authentic self. I think that's okay. And then the other quick,
I think we kind of coach this at Blue Startups too, right? You got to come into the room and puff up your chest and speak loudly and bring it, right? Is what we say, because your presence is communicating so much as well, right? And your confidence, and then you've got to walk that fine line between confidence and arrogance, right? And so it's, you know, you kind of want to be right there on the edge the whole time, because the more of that you bring, honestly, the more investors are listening and the more interested they are in your company, right? So it's that fine line, and women have a little bit, I think, harder time getting up to that line, right? They want to be very sure that what they're saying is absolutely true, and and backed up with facts, and, you know, all of these great things, great attributes. But in this game, we kind of have to have a little bit of that puffery going on, right? So it's just part of it, right? So yeah. All right, so my last question, and I want to get to our audience so that they can ask some questions. So real quickly, this may be obvious to some, but I think everybody probably has a different answer. Why is this important? Trish, we'll start with you.
It's important on so many levels, on multiple levels, but I think the first one is that there is innovation that women are creating that will enhance the world and create wealth and change our lives, but it needs the fuel. And so if women are not getting that fuel, we are not going to get those solutions. And so it is absolutely important. Paulette mentioned women's health. We created the first women's health fund, Portfolia Femtech, ever, and that was in 2018. It's a $200 billion market, and that's not even taking menopause in. And there had never been a venture fund focused in women's health. And it's because venture capitalists are all men, and they're not really comfortable about, you know, childbirth, painful periods, you know, hot flashes, you know, so many of these things, even knowing what it's like to have a mammogram, you know, a universal experience for most of it. And so and whether it's women's health, or it's active aging, which we're going to be impacted by, or any of the things that are of interest to us, we better be at the table when we're talking about AI, you know, all of those things. And that's why it's so important to be backing women. And that's why it's so important for women to be at the table writing the checks.
Yes, well said. All right, Paulette, what do you think? Why is this important?
Well, I think Trish summed it up a lot there. Yeah, I would just add, you know, all of that. And then just from a gender equality standpoint, you know, this is going to just be kind of a domino effect across the board, and bringing us to, you know, an equal level across a playing field, right? So it just helps us overall in what we're, you know, trying to accomplish. And, you know, listen, I have 2 daughters. They're young, they're listening, they're watching. So like it's important for this next generation coming up too, that we start to like really try to level this playing field so that, you know, they're not walking into a room with all male investors that don't understand what their, you know, that their company can change lives, and, you know, and that they really are able to get up there and have a level playing field. So that's why I do it all too.
Yep, that is a very good reason on Girls' Day. We're all thinking about our daughters if we have them. I'm thinking about mine for sure. Liza, what about you? Why is this important?
Yeah, well, I have 3 daughters myself, so definitely important. They watch what I do every day, and they come sit in these chairs behind me, and they get home and they usually talk to me about what I'm doing, and they're very interested in it, right? So I think it's really important, one, for them to have role models not just myself, but women in general, in the seats of places they aspire to be, whatever it is, right? So that's really important. And then two, I think women, like for example, my company, tend to solve problems that help other people elevate. And so for my example about Instant Teams, now we've given, I did the math the other day, over $17 million of income to military spouses generated from the company. So other women that would necessarily work in the workforce, needed jobs, needed a second income, needed that kind of ability. And women tend to solve those kinds of problems that just elevate other people that are marginalized, not just women, but people of color, you know, all kinds of different diversity. And so when we invest and we focus on that, we automatically just get more diversity and all kind of boats rise. We tend to, you know, want to lift up everyone as we go up. And that's definitely my goal. Like as we take Insta Teams and we're running towards taking it public, I want to take as many people with me as I can. And when I get done, same thing, pour back into as many people to get to that same path that I can. And so when you invest in women, I think we automatically, a lot of us anyway, automatically have that intrinsic desire to build community and to help, you know, raise everybody up along with us as we go.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to remind the audience that we're going to move to a Q&A. So if you have a question, drop it in the Q&A function or raise your hand and we'll bring you up on stage. Aubrie, your thoughts here. Why is it important?
I don't really know that I mean, I sort of agree and would echo what everyone said. I don't know that I can add any, I mean, other than that, it's like we're in the US and I feel like core value is around meritocracy and it's just not fair if everyone should get the same opportunities. I feel like that's like a sort of like one of our sort of like inalienable values. And so I think that's what I felt a lot during my career. It was like, this isn't fair. Like, you know, like, and so I think that's really motivating for me and why I do it a lot too, is whether that's helping women, whether that's helping other underrepresented founders, non-binary founders, Black founders. It's like everybody should have an equal shot. I think it's really important for the world to be becoming better.
Awesome. All right. So yes, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. I know we have a few questions here in the chat, so I'll just ask those out loud. One was about lifestyle businesses being a negative for venture capital. And as a female founder, I'm assuming this person maybe has a lifestyle company or is thinking about one. What's your take on that? Is that a negative? Maybe you can explain kind of a little bit the mechanics there. Aubrie, go ahead.
Oh, sure. So, not a negative in terms of like, it could be a very good business and more power to anybody who wants to build good businesses. I think there's lots of good businesses that are not venture backable for lots of reasons. Venture is a weird asset class in the sense that we are trying to, over a very short time period, get a huge amount of return from a company. And so it's really, when I say it's a negative, it's really a math problem. It's like what we're trying to understand and assess is like, if we put money into this company and own a certain percentage of this company, is this company going to have enough escape velocity that's going to get so big that when it exits, based on the capital that was put in and how much we were diluted, we're going to make a multiple back on our fund. That's like the math that we like actually do and that we underwrite against. And so oftentimes when you say quote unquote lifestyle business, there's a lot of things that are implied in that around the pace of scale, the amount of capital required to make the company grow, and the ultimate outcome that the company can achieve. So oftentimes that math problem just like doesn't work for a venture because we're fiduciaries, we're beholden to our LPs to make the most amount of money possible. And oftentimes that doesn't align with what's quote unquote called a lifestyle business. That said, I don't think there's anything wrong with a lifestyle business. I actually think it's a way better lifestyle. And I think that's why they call it that.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, Liza, you always get that question, right? Are you sure? It's because like what you're doing is really hard. Are you sure that you want to do that? Yeah, so thanks for explaining that, Aubrie. It's simply just not a good fit for the asset class of venture capital, but it doesn't mean it's not a good business. And it may be a good fit for many other types of investors or bank loans or all the other kind of financing mechanisms out there. Okay, so small technical difficulty here that somebody typed a question, but I can't see it. For some reason, it's like off my screen. So sorry, whoever wrote that question. Maybe try to put it in the chat, even though I told you not to do that. But now I'm asking you to do that because I can't see it in the Q&A function. Unless somebody else
read it to you? I can read it to you.
Okay, thanks.
How would you recommend approaching crowdfunding? How can we onboard traditional investors to invest in crowdfunding campaigns?
Thank you. Who wants to address the crowdfunding issue? Anyway, Paulette, do you have any thoughts on crowdfunding? Any companies do that?
You know, I've seen a few do it, and a lot of times, you know, I think a lot of work goes into it up front, and that's sort of where the success comes from, is really kind of creating that campaign and making a strong story and getting your network around it before launch to really see the success from it. That's where I've seen the best ones come through.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is a huge PR undertaking and marketing effort. So if you're down for that, if that's something that you're capable of and that's in your company's DNA, it can be a good mechanism. Otherwise, it's probably going to fall flat, and that's going to just kind of waste a lot of your time, frankly, and not end up with a lot in your pocket. Any other thoughts on crowdfunding?
I just wanted to add, there is a really, I Fund Women is a great crowdfunding platform, and they have just like a lot of resources on there too. If you're thinking about going that route, it's a great place to start.
So one thing to be careful about, I'll just toss out, is that crowdfunding regulation. So this is all about regulatory, because I agree. I like I Fund Women, a number of them. The regulatory setup is that if you crowdfund, you must make a lot of information about your company, including some of your financials, open to the public. Mm-hmm. And so often companies do not want to make all that information, you know, available to the public and their competitors. So mm-hmm. there's kind of sometimes an inverse correlation between, you know, quality and, you know, if you're going to put it all out there like that, sometimes that's your only chance, you know. So just be careful as an entrepreneur to understand what you're agreeing to when you crowdfund.
That's a great point, Trish. I think the other thing to be aware of is if you are on the path of this kind of high growth venture capital model, many venture capitalists don't like to come on after a crowdfunding campaign is already on your cap table. So you kind of need to be aware of that as well. Some are just not going to go there because they don't trust the crowdfunding platform or what have you. They think that opens you up to liability from various shareholders that might be in there. You know, every VC is going to look at that a little differently, but some are definitely have kind of the hard and fast rule against it. So I see a question from my buddy Rain, who about 1 million years ago was an intern and is now a founder of his own startup. Yay. So he says, male founder here. I found that many of my early angels are unintentionally men, and many of our investors have come from their networks, also male dominated. Advice for breaking that dangerous trend. Currently working on building a more realistic and balanced advisory board. So thoughts? Rain and I have had any conversations about this. I keep saying, you need to work on your diversity issues, Rain. This slide looks terrible. It's all boys and men. Ugh. So thoughts, how does he level this? All right. Anyone have ideas for Rain?
So women are growing. If there's an area where there's growth, it's in women angels. I mean, that is where the major growths are happening. And just to toss out here, you know, and you can check me on this with BNY Mellon, just put a big report out. Fidelity did. You know, they're all over. Just, you know, put it in Google. Women control about, you know, going on $30 trillion of investable capital now in the US. So we have so much money. We're right at that point of tipping over to having the majority of individual personal investable assets. So there's a lot of women with a lot of money. I would just make sure there's women angel groups. You know, there's groups like ours there's lots of the new micro funds that are out there are led by women. And so they're out there. You just need to stretch beyond your normal networks, because lots and lots and lots of women at the early stage are investing.
So thank you, Trish. Any other thoughts for Rain? I've told him he needs to get a co-founder that's female. That would bring in female investors too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, that's obviously not going to be the answer for everybody. But any other thoughts for Rain on diversification and in his investor group there? Okay, I'll move on to Cliff's comment, which is a funny one. There's a fair amount of data that shows that women are better investors than men. Could you explain why there are less angels and VCs? Are you all just smarter? Because angel and VC that's a hard game, right? It's a hard way to make a return. Any thoughts on that?
I guess I can start and say one thought that I think is building off of what was just said, which is what I was going to say earlier around kind of how you fix this problem, or how to think about it, is as more and more women take over the investable assets in the country. I mean, we're all going to like outlive men and have more of the purchasing power. I think there's a sort of comfort and education gap that I think a lot of good resources and groups are broaching. So one is, I think that there has been a gap in terms of men and women growing up having facility with these types of asset classes and with being on this side of the table. A lot of times historically, by the research, like women are much more philanthropic and have historically been like on that side of the table. And so I think that's part of it, is that it's getting women more comfortable. There's like a group in LA who's doing this. There's a couple groups that are focused on this, which I think will start to turn the tide on just like this mass of wealth. I also think it's a generational thing where, you know, alternative retail assets are now like Gen Z, all they want to do is like invest in meme stocks and crypto. And like, there's just a lot more accessibility to playing around with alternative asset classes. And I'm really energized by that. Like, I think that the fact that people can kind of get their hands dirty earlier and earlier will lead to more diverse people sort of going into this as like a real career. And then on the angel side, I mean, yeah, it's like usually angels a lot of times are people who make their own money and then have it to invest. And I think that goes beyond this conversation, but there's a lot of reasons why women haven't made as much money as men historically.
Yeah. That's a vicious cycle here.
Well, that's, and just to talk, I mean, I haven't talked about the details of this, but I have two, it looks like I have at least a couple of it, of my own portfolio investors on the attendee list over here. Hi, Sylvia. But why we created Portfolia was for this very reason. You know, if you invest as an angel, you need to do 30 deals in 5 years, according to the latest statistics, to get enough diversification to make money. You know, and that I was a very active angel. I didn't do 5 deals a year. I would have to have, you know, probably taken 100 into diligence, you know, at least mid diligence. So I created Portfolia because because I could create funds and put 249 people in a fund around a thesis and invest in, you know, 10 to 12 to 15 companies with professional investors in each of those. And so those are all women, whether it's women's health, food and ag tech, green and sustainability, people of color, you know, all those spaces. But I have 1,300 women investors in those funds, and over $40 million invested in over 100 companies. And our results are amazing, but it's because women are really smart investors. I have 39 women partners, actually 38 and one man. And they do, you know, our results are really incredible, but it's that kind of model. So we have to keep thinking out of the box. Mm-hmm. I trained VCs for 20 years, you know, creating Kauffman Fellows. And that's a traditional model. But the only way I see real difference is for us to create non-traditional models that work for us. Mm-hmm. And that's how, we'll see more women backed.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good point, Trish. It's one of the things I always point out about both angel and VC, female and founders, because if you're the only one in the room, when you, let's say, you come to an angel meeting and you're the only woman there or one of very few, it's not very encouraging to come back into that room. You don't feel comfortable. And it's the same thing as one of the main reasons why at Blue Startups, we try to keep a good balance of female founded companies, because we want female led companies to feel comfortable in the room. Like, this is a place where I belong, not that I'm like the odd man out here. This is kind of weird. I'm like the only woman in here, I feel a little like I don't belong here. So, it has to, and maybe it's, as you said, Trish, maybe we need to just change the room rather than, trying to force fit, ourselves into these rooms, right? So just change the room. Mm-hmm. And think outside the box and what's going to work for us. So I really appreciate that comment. All right, gang, we are going to wrap it up there. I want to thank all of our panelists very much for joining us, and for our audience for joining us today. I want to remind everyone that Blue Startups is open for applications for cohort 14. We are definitely looking for female founded companies, is one of the things that we are really eager to get applicants in that, and to help you get to that next level. So it is a 13-week mentorship program, comes with up to $100,000 in funding. Liza's been through it. She knows what it's all about. And we're going to do this next program will be in part virtual and in part in person. So we're looking at a hybrid, 6 weeks in Honolulu, 6 weeks virtual, and 1 week in San Francisco. So we're always playing around with the formula here in this post-pandemic world, but that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be running June 13th to September 22nd, I believe. So you can find more information on our website, bluestartups.com. And again, thank you very much to Aubrie and Liza and Paulette and Trish. Thank you so much for participating today. Yay. And we'll talk to you all later. Aloha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone sign up for Blue Startups.